So let's search.
Yes, that's us. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Video.
YouTube go jam do.
Yes. There we are.
Yeah.
Hello. Tistele.
Hello.
So tango the jargon number some dile.
Okay, let's start. Tistele, everybody.
And then so tanda same jong garam tsai ngoreta tsai nyomomba tricksarta ni nyomomba nang chani patal lesson.
Juniper. Yeah. So Geshe Lharampa has been teaching His Holiness's text called Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics. There are different volumes, and we're using the second volume. It talks about the mind. And Geshe Lharampa has taught on different mental factors. There are 5 so-called omnipresent factors, 5 determining mental factors, 11 virtuous factors, 6 root afflictions, and now we are within this category of 20 secondary afflictions. And we have reached, Geshe Lharampa talked about the first 11 of those. And so the 12th is called non-embarrassment.
That's what any ngotsa ja gewa chachikana ngotsa shipata cheyo pa ninjo tsar sonza ta ka sa chachik pa ngotsa mepata chani pa che mepa ni re tini dosho ta tere te kar ze go de ngazo makashi yore so pena jazishia kama jawa kyoba marab dikcha che atenjila so le nyeng mare san nzem to che de ni ngotsa shipare tenzem to me che at ngotsa mepa tere njo ta che mepa ze at til dote ta ngazo tropot so ta mi jamba khata ya ta dikcha she re ze atenji che kan le ngo cham go ni kyon to so le kama jawa yo jishe Jazishinja, Mandachetia, Samlo Chiora, Samlo Tereta, Samlo Telecheme Pala de Ore, Mijambal and Zemtomichi.
Yeah. So this in the ebook version is on page 179. And just to recap a little bit, the previous one, the 11th out of the 20 secondary afflictions, we said is shamelessness, and that's the very opposite of having a sense of shame, which we talked about earlier. And we said that that's a mindset that thinks, for me, it is not appropriate to engage in negative actions such as stealing, killing, lying, and so forth. And so shamelessness is the very opposite. So here one doesn't care about however negative one reacts, thinking it doesn't matter if I do these things. And then the next one is non-embarrassment. Again, it's the opposite of embarrassment, what we mentioned before. This is similar, and it's a thought that doesn't really, embarrassment is when one considers others. It is not, say my parents or my friends or, my teachers, they wouldn't find that appropriate if I, engaged in whatever, stealing, lying, and so forth. So here, non-embarrassment is lacking that sense, one doesn't care if one acts negatively, one doesn't care about one's teachers, what one's teachers say, or one's parents, and so forth.
Also, then it under the Kazan the Soya Shirat to the Hardin said it. The Cheme Patawina took some corn which I top as a cousin, what's a mepatia, took some corn which I top at and Jizini Consan Choshindo. The Karzina took some the Atan Dochatan control down, Dochatan control down, Dochata control that the Musum deri. That the corn which I top as the Gashi, Dochaka Wangi, Kazashian Gashi, control Wangi Kazashia, Kashi, Tumuka Wangi. And what's a mepeta, Kazashe de at Jikin Wangi, my yon de Yosonta, took some corner which I top as the Tenijiko.
Something I would like to add on, which I haven't mentioned before, is that both shamelessness and non-embarrassment are associated with either one of the so-called 3 poisons, which refer to anger, attachment, and ignorance. So here, this can mean that one engages in any kind of negative actions. Either, out of attachment, out of a sense of attachment, one engages in lying, or out of anger or ignorance, one engages in negative actions.
Not to do suit Manzembism, the Ritan, Tani, Ta Mugotini, Chasamba Mugpata, Churchapa Gopa Nitaritan, the Nite, Ketonabia, Natsu Matsama Gomja Gapoche or Gomja Vikavlandika Parche Cheshore.
So then the next ones, the number 13 and 14 are dullness and excitation, and they come up, when we meditate. These days, many people have a liking for meditation, right? And so dullness and excitation are both the main hindrances, or these factors are the ones who create the greatest obstacles for us to have good meditation.
Tande Koro concept of Mukpal and the Sonda, Mukpatel, Mukpa Conler, number Chester Zonyan, Lucem Chejan, Lucem Morovi, Nyopol Chepi, Tumuki Chartopi, Sam Jones etita, also Mukpando Chilapa, Mukpa. Le Gomjani Devi Kapsa, Pa Mupatel ki on dima Lucem Kanga Karnan de Shaniba, Nyoto Chanita, Mantum Jion Samlo Tinichil Jacori, Karnan Shani, Jendo Mepa, Semgutani Mupatel Samlo Jani Dendo Mepa, Tendija, the Tumukachato, so Tumukachi de Reze, or what in the Samlo Chile.
So it's same key
Mupachil Semten Jara Gomjavikas. Also Mupat Gomjavikasani, Zipoteon, Made Dendro, Sembateon, Jugo Sapochanima, Jendo Mepa, Gomjamdo Mepama, to be on it.
So dullness is here explained in the text to be associated with delusion, and it's a mental factor that causes physical and mental heaviness and makes the mind hazy and unserviceable in apprehending the aspect of its object. So this is, when we, try to focus on a particular object of meditation, can be any object we choose. And then, we don't really want, because of the dullness, mental effect of dullness that makes the body heavy, if we don't really, one is kind of tired, mentally tired to engage in the meditation due to dullness.
No, Timan Tumdroya, Gomja Kazanga, Nyota Chaniman Tumdroya and Delijakore. Gopa the other Tilly Dochore, Dochaki Chartosha, Doyo La Sopi, Dupin Samala Muni, Sim Major, Chum Chuvis, Sam Jones editandi, Dochaka Chatore, the student Dopachini. Ta Gomja David Casa, Mupachil Gomja David Casa, Ta Denitro Marna, Kashil Semo Sendro Gosasa, Kashis Kalajam Bochiza, Kashitemo Mukil Kirikiti Session, Little Magic Ducha, Tan Kirikiti Segora. Tendila Saulo Gom the Majani Samlo Yaju Maju Chini Samlo Shondro at Go Paritan, Naso Naju Gomjati Hako Katina Yanama, Simba Tanchinima, Nyoto Chani, Anitia Mike, Nyoton Rocha Go Paroa. Yana, Sim Yajundo, Domaji, Chichego, Muchegos, and Choloshondro, Tinika, Tangin the Trinjo Word, and go Pasinatere.
Yeah. So then the next one, number 14 is excitation, and that's explained to be associated with attachment and its mental factor that upon seeing attractive characteristics, such as those in desirable sense objects, scatters the mind so that it becomes unpeaceful. So that's the opposite of dullness. Dullness, as we said, is more like, sense of feeling mentally tired, heavy. And excitation is the opposite, where one is overly excited or agitated, thinking about all sorts of, say, sense objects. One might think of going for a walk or going to play cricket or having, good food, these things, and, because of which then the mind becomes unpeaceful and also, one cannot stay focused on the object of meditation.
What thing it is, and the Gomjam Tombo Jam Tini Konika Nasol Calitriumbre, Yandroma Chile, the Nia Kala Consam Chileti, Chimazi actually, Chimazi de at Gom Mupaliapo, de Tubicable, de Tugabs, Mupatan Tata, de Devala Parishi, Mupatamate, Nyoptunda Sabo Menu, and our Chichini de Achi retail. Yon number Jungonal Chimazinita, Tangin the Kyonashi or Patana, the Gom Reading in the Churretella, Gom Jami Mombo, the Gom Race and the Tingolajani, Mupasa Bojamato, Mupama, Nyopto Chanimato, Cholonto Marta, Tata Gomjan Deori, Tendici Ritate, Gomjab Chayamina, Telecho Chimasavlo Tonda, Asim Nyopto Chachi Ayomari, Yasebo Shuchi Cheto at Kechemore.
She said, Mukpatang double is this too.
Tezen Rapo Yorita, Tande Gum Kalakansa Malina Yungomari, Mupa Tombo Nilegri.
And then there's, it's not mentioned in this list here, but we have also the mental effect of laxity, which is, I mean, in a sense, maybe a little bit similar to dullness, but laxity only arises when one kind of already has progressed in one's meditation practice, as it were, or when one already has some practice and is, not a pure beginner, as it more, So then in one's meditation practice, one might be able to focus on the object. One is able to hold the object, because as a pure beginner, one easily loses it, right? But when one is able to be able to stay focused on the object, holds it for some time, but then laxity may come in, or oftentimes comes in, that one is not able to see the object clearly anymore. And many people mistake that for good concentration, but in actuality, although one is kind of focused on the object, but it's not clearly appearing to the mind, so it's laxity rather than good meditation.
Non, je monte io sanda mondo mato, tini je mote ciore, je monte semni sambal mali pat tanda jipon de cio ma. Jipon de ciwan son ciri, ciwat gumjani kan sam mali pat yung mari ngaso ciwan lesa on the gum ozi yapo chawa tanda wo ciri.
Dina la do.
Do.
Shuktan de ni do. There's I can't remember the page, but it's in the Tibetan, in the English, I can't remember seeing it. But anyway, there's a quite popular drawing of the, how to establish shamatha. It's somewhere in the book, I have seen it, but I can't remember the page. But there are all sorts of representation of these hindrances. Because mukpadang, gupadang.
Mukpan sochil ma jian sochil jipon chik chik. Jipon de jimata da tombo ni yo mari. Gan le yatli on the triore o te sonza jiwa te kalimato yungu yo mari.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of like a path that one needs to follow, and it's and there are langchen dang pio yang tisha dura.
Tani tombo ni yore ta jipon de.
There's the langchen kitunda kaji?
Langchen da kore sem darwa.
Okay. Yes. So then there's an elephant, for example, which represents the mind in general, the mind of the meditator. And then there's a monkey, also very much in the beginning. So that stands for excitement, right? But then only later, once the meditator progresses on the path to developing proper shamatha, proper concentration, only later on there's a little rabbit. And the rabbit represents laxity. So that shows that, laxity only comes when one's already, has some practice, one is able to hold the object.
Nijmoti nal ya sondi piu ta jipoganga kari ndorore te changol khate choy kachari kuni ma me pa zo kachari doka ta tombo na karbu.
And then what also is there to see in the picture is that they, like the elephant and the monkey and the rabbit, are black in the beginning, and that as further one progresses on the path, they get whiter and whiter, which is to say that these, excitement and laxity and so forth get lesser and lesser, and that eventually they're not there anymore, and turn totally white, and then are not anymore there.
Last what need to see tande mukpa zeata gopa zeata so tangin the gom jam ke choro so na pachin the jam trotli la ore ndeni kanung nga so samche de gore tani mate patri tani mate pat ta li la pon ro chir kazan te ba she tsara te ba do cha ta ta she gore.
So as you're into meditation, you will probably easily understand what these things refer to. Then the next one, the 15th of the secondary afflictions, is faithlessness, and that's pretty easy to understand.
Tepa zede at Kasa she son tepa zeata, and so non chu in sons and non chu jacini tepa she or it, tepa she on the pena, legium really yichi bataola yichi tepata, Sanji Shatiata Pataola Yagawa Gombata, Tangi tepata, and Chancho Kusem Danije La Sopa Soso, Tiendo Patao Chona, Mondo Kitapa, then Jacayore, but Tilly Dochte Sanji Leon, Legend Leon Yamache, Sanji Tole Gapo Mache, Chancho Kusem Tatso, Yamli and Soso Chendo Mate, so Pentocomari Samni Samlotle, Matapaz, anything like Lauri, Docho Tata Jaco.
So faithlessness, again, is the very opposite of faith. And we talked about this earlier on. And we also said that there are 3 types of faith. One can have a sense of inspired faith, feeling inspired, say, in the enlightened ones, or inspired. And then there's also the inspiration to follow accordingly. And the confident faith, or faith belief, which is based on trusting faith. But here, faithlessness is the very opposite of these.
Oh, Tinita, the tepat, Tanachu Kechari, Chul Ron Tepa, you come to Shiat, Nachu Jain Sonsan, Nachu Tepa Zediat, Tinichimons Chevore, Taketoni, Leka Karachina, Tepa Zeat, Kachemborita, Leka Jambachil Tepat, GP Tanyat Mary Mato, Leka Karachina, Telegabo Yogori, Lekatel, Gabo Yopa Mazeti, Lekatel, Tinisoso, Trumdich Lendo Yogori. Roa, Trumdich Lemdo, Gapo, Tantani, Tinichina. Trumdich in Joguri Sambi Yichi Yogori, Jawa Karadum Nangil, Tesam de Ona, Jawa the Yapon Joguri. Nachuchi Capsia, Leka Kaina, Kori Yichis Moti, Cherkesam Zoma, Yapoyunguri, Sonsa Tepa Kitchen was the degree.
I mean, here we're talking about about faith or faithlessness in the Buddhist context, but I mean, one can apply to basically any religion, really. But also one can apply to any work or activity one does. If one has a liking or when one wants to go about a certain task, one needs to have a liking for it, and then aspire for achieving a certain result. One also needs to have a sense of faith in it, or like belief, trust. So but again, here we are talking about the Buddhist context.
No, Tanita, Chitukba Lelo, the Tumuka Tobarindo, Yanyum, Nyavalas of Peace, Team Chippy, gives Nyavalas of Palestinians, gave a same mucho chippy, same Jongos, Ritande, Pachi Labore, Suit, Yomonga Chartochi, Gorichetan, Tani, a gave a leka carche conata, not so. Nachu Shol Gom Gona Gomjani Nini Joandra, Lolochini Den Joandra, Tanji, Tayana, Leka Jamba Chendo Pamato, Tanda Geva Corol Chemando Pitanji, Pan Sembayan into the Agleka Chiri, Tanda Tachi Gomjati Pancho and Nachan Gopa Ziachindo, Chipan Chirindwa.
Chipa.
Chipata Kai, yes, Japondosi.
This is
Ajindo Chachaton, Dr. Mukichatorindo.
So the next one is laziness, and here it says in the text it's associated with delusion, and it's a mental factor that, in dependence on sleep and so on, causes the mind to lack enthusiasm for virtue. And Geshe says it is associated with delusion, but it might be a bit similar to excitation, which is excellent. Mukpa.
Tanda Gopa Ziachua.
Yeah.
Gopa and Dochaka Wangi Sim Chalol Jingjo. The Ki Lelo Wangi Pa Cheni Mutoni Kantanika gave Sholom Patento Omar, gave a Cheni to Omar. Yina Pashokot Su Gomra, the gave a Karina, Lo John the Chiri Karina Cheni Mutoni, Niku de Sayanda Otayana, Kajicholo Dramatando Walma, Lelo. And
we said that excitation is, getting distracted from the object due to attachment. And here laziness is basically also you are getting distracted from the object, but here due to delusion. One doesn't want to engage in, virtuous actions, meditation, or what else, but then rather prefers to, go to sleep or nikuya, okay.
Lobjo Chenkechil, Dixur, Tant Lecandere, Tandela Eva Samjandu, teaching us at the Terracore, Gilupilelo, Chavanga Gengilo, Daniel Nipilelo, Zeachi, Penangandaji, Nachu Janichina, Tangaji, Tatrita Tomundo Sanitaja, Sani Lady, Tasanita Tomundo Nanitaja, and December Leva Tele Gilupilelo Zeviore.
Then laziness is described to have is to be of 3 types. We have the kind of indolence, and liking for negative actions, Or the first one also can mean procrastination, just sloth, procrastination, indolence. And the next one is, liking for negative actions. And the third one is or self-disparagement, thinking that I'm not, able to do certain things.
Then, that Jawangaji Gililo Zediata, Tanga Yingi Nanshu Chenichiri, Nanshu to Machine, Yantapa Leka Jamba Kanjo, Jenny Gudiat, Jawangaji Gililo Zikri, Ben the Nanshu Chenich, Nanshu Chenich, Nanshu to Macheni, Tanda Su Chulun Joyori, Lelo Zeat, Chumacheni, Java Jamba Chil, Jelilo Zeat, Macheni, Yuja Roa, Jawangaji Gililo Zeat, Nanshu to Machine, Java Jamba Cheni Gudiat. Ta Daniel Nibili Lozio, Tangi Chancho Kusem Gum to Maria, Chancho Semzia, the Kalishuri, Gomja to Mari, Gomja Kalishuri, Zeni, Soso, Nathan Jo Mari, Teta, Mijamba Pitachi Cherry Mato, Nathan Jo Mari, Soso, Tonchon Chatla, Chawangajina, Daniel Nibili Lola.
So Rangla So, guys, in a Jawangan, Chinky Lilo, Lekaducha, Inchimichi Segamaro.
Chumain be Chawa Kanjan, Chini, Chuchen Kitchen, Balachutu Machini Jambali Theatre.
Okay, so the first one that Geshe explains is negative actions, but it doesn't. Here as we are talking in the about the Dharma in the Dharma context. So this is in relation to Dharma practitioner. And that type of laziness is engaging in all sorts of other activities other than Dharma actions. So I understand it to mean that it doesn't have to be necessarily only negative, but it's doing actions that have nothing really to do with Dharma practice. Yeah.
Okay,
And then the last, the next time Geshe explains is the self-disparagement, where one thinks that, I'm not suitable or I'm not able to, say, develop qualities such as bodhicitta. Others are much better. It's kind of like a sense of looking down onto oneself.
Tombanya tangali yongomari niji chimbo tangali yongomari ngeta tete kandonda ochichini dede na sound the lelo chimbo tsegore koso kari na michi ke toya ke chala chire mato ngata koze ayo ma chena kala concept soso chede na kala concept tumre chile ayo re kyoni ma cheni ngenjo mare labde na kyoni tumre le ayo mara so sandri lelo te chashure no bondu tento andu.
Yeah, so many it's a very heavy form of laziness is this self-disparagement, where one looks down onto oneself, thinking, I'm not, really able or qualified to develop bodhicitta or meditate on emptiness, develop a sense of compassion and so forth. I rather, just recite something. It's a very strong form of laziness. But if one, has that mindset, one will probably not even start to do anything, and then of course there will not be any results if one doesn't even try.
Last tandi dosho tata de ni manga zu ge chachina rowa zunji zia chinro so de ora
di chilupilelo
chilupilelo ta chi tombo she sa tombo she sa imba chi we tadi dosho tata zunji ze de par she zunji ze de te ne ma chinro imba ge chin chachina no
But anyway, so the very opposite of laziness is then enthusiastic effort, which we have talked about before. It's one of the 11 virtuous mental factors.
Dikashuchik the Tangazo Nabyan, Dachigre, Samla Nabi Zazo Chegore, Dixon Karugo, a control wangi nari, Dochaka wangi nari, the Mukangi nari, Java Namba, Dikata Sola, Sempioni Masoni, Yuchijat, Semba Sonkyo machine. That's was Zavzam Row machine. Simply by Dukas, Samba Dukas or Cats and Joan at the Son machine. Monina Chengo Bayoziat Simpson Sonia Chiroa, Sonia Chirita, not a Trabanda China, Songoya Mombo Chiori, Songoya Mombo to Masoni, San Logoni Masoni Tanjatel, El Parmese.
So the next mental factor is heedlessness. It's on page 181 in the ebook. And this is explained to be a mental factor that, based on any of the three poisons, is in association with laziness, behaves carelessly without guarding the mind against accumulating mental afflictions and faults. And again, this is the opposite of conscientiousness. And so here, and conscientiousness is explained to be a mental factor that is very careful to protect one's mind, not to act negatively. And so heedlessness is the opposite, not caring about, not protecting one's mind, and so that makes one then being careless about acting in negative ways.
Lugun transportation the calendar zani machini momboza yo mari chini pariyongore cha momboza o chang pariyongore yo jaksa momboza o ma za de songa yo re tindi che manyere zini nga so she ondi nga so te nyeng yo la nyeni se ondi kala konsam tel yacha ma to na yo kala konsam su che de yo ro te na je tan nga so she de at sem gu trote ran re de sem gre sem gu na le nyomo band so penan do chartiena sozo kangi chegri semmeke pazori jerdan chena semmeke pazori ne yorke talelo ndo so sama semmeke pazori zeni teshe de ore teshe kapsala taso shia navje semla katike dena shi torkyoni machene lojana pa me chandro tu o tenti cheki o mari sane zavzav semgonani zavzav cheta payo chade ore payo pa mezine teri sonke cheni ngoma soso go semla takye cheni ta sonke ngoni ndo.
For example, we can think of a patient having some health issues, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor tells them to say refrain from eating too sweet things or too salty things because they would bring up the blood pressure, or they should refrain from eating oily food and so forth. And even if the patient is not able to follow that advice 100%, but they will do their best, say, to follow the doctor's advice. And so here, likewise, someone who has conscientiousness, they will be mindful, be careful to protect their minds from, and then trying to work with their minds. Being careful about not letting anger, attachment, all the afflictions arise too strongly, and trying in a sense to work with their minds and not to act out, they act the afflictions out in negative ways. So here heedlessness is then not caring about this.
Andani jenge the tagi mu pa chendro atri kitan jea ta chalan ramda jendro me fon shal la son zendo kabar shal jendro sha zendo nge tanan leka chi jendro leka mombo jea chi ori tan desu jewat nga gi mu pa jendro ag jewat re nyomongo jengi ze at cha hora nyenyo nishina jengi ze de at ta gi mu pa jendro at ge wa che ala chi so lonza chena lonza mo to gi mu pa karina sharmato ma chunye sandro na yukit shosho kona lamsa jendro achi ora o ti jengi te tere te hakoda navji chezia lila ora chambag lo.
Yeah, so then the 18th is forgetfulness, whereas generally speaking one could understand it to mean forgetting one's phone or whatever, but here in this context we're talking about forgetting a virtuous object. Say reading something or we're listening to some teachings, but we easily forget, the teachings that we've heard.
And it's
the opposite of mindfulness.
Nyomo chan kanj gzir gosam gi kyopa kanro la mishib jandan chik par chepi sem jong lam do ta te shirab nyomo cha kanj gzir yu nga so kandro yirnge nga na la shirab ze ya chi wa shirab yimba la shirab na ni shirab dik kya ta nyomo chang gi shirab res te yimba kanj la ta ton da karelina lig kyopa ina ri nga kyopa ina sem gu kyopa mishi janda khamba gyam ni yir la panjing jo ag sem jong chik la tanda shij ma yimba ze yores Mashi Shandale Cattle Panjing Dondo Samlo Chiora, Hamba Jamni Samlo, the Panjing Droa Chiora, what is Shivja Maim by the Oris?
Aning Yunginga, Nanglola?
Yunginam nang shirab tari. Shirab nang shirab nyomonchan. Shirab tala nyomonchan zaya chi yun ke shirab ta yonde yin ke shirab. Shirab sama yonde mari. Nyomonchan shirab.
So the 19th factor is a lack of meta-awareness, or sometimes translated as lack of introspection. And it is explained to be a mental factor that is an afflictive intelligence that engages in activities of body, speech, or mind without meta-awareness or introspection. So this is basically not being aware, not being aware of any actions, negative actions that one engages in with one's body, speech, and mind.
Shirab the ko shivjan the tatanji kayo na ko shivjan the chandora you can give an all shivjan the achi te chandro and the shivjan the hamba jamni yerlanjik de achiora tell shivjan main baz in what the shedere.
Yeah, so the opposite. I mean, here it speaks about it's a mental factor which is an afflictive intelligence, and we spoke about these 5 determining factors before, and wisdom is one of these 5.
Raison.
The Yunginga
mare ki shivjan da yungema gap chasinalio.
She's a unit.
Shivjan main bag dosho the shivjan ra shivjan the gap chasinalio.
Anyway, okay, so
shivjan the indue gap chasinalio sa me mendro.
Here.
Due. Tedio ma shiv ta tapoyoshin the gatanyo mo sa shichu sa. Sunji ta ko la mesa tanjik. Ndix fish. Mesa.
Yeah, shame.
Mes.
Conscientiousness.
Ilio tata poyoshin the gap. Tata poyoshin the gayos.
Mindfulness. Yeah. Anyway, so it's the lack of meta-awareness or lack of introspection is the opposite of meta-awareness or introspection. Yes, part of these 11 virtuous mental factors.
And there you have something. Cathy Treromachini that. What in it is a Shinjanzi the Atata, and now you'll take some, and now you're the Atatachi Gopata, the Nil Chabarkari, take some power of Chartosha, Mupala, Sim Trojan, or Chippy Sim Jones, the Tachi Gopata, Chipanji Imbalan, the control Wangi Sim Shaloshandra, the Muguangi Sim Shaloshandra, Dochaka Wangi Sim Shaloshandra, Tomala, Dochi Jakandu Congo, Gopa Zediata, Su Jane Gomba Gopion. Gomjavi caps and Docha Wangi Sim Shalom Chondro, Atenichi Jacandu. Tate Matate Jayat and Jacandu. Tombot at the Gersh.
In a young Gombi capsule,
Tombot at Machi Gershot at any tract. And the Tuxum Gwangi Sim Shalom Gongita and Docha Wangi Sim Shalom Shendu.
So then the 20th factor is distraction, and this is explained to be associated with any of the 3 poisons. And that is a mental factor that causes the mind to become scattered and distracted. So that's a bit similar to excitation that we talked about before. So when we're meditating and excitation comes up, then we are distracted or overly excited about an object of attachment. But here distraction is when we meditate and are distracted by any objects. Can be an object of attachment, anger, or ignorance.
Yeah, that the chicken reset. I consent Chokobuki, Jimal, Kijipchashi, or Sondo, Chingon Charot, and Namian Soki, Chapter Shop, the Janiki Caps and Chapter in Jeros in the Tangazo, Gopa Zedia, the Namian Zedia, the Sim Troa Zedia and Ota, that Chima, Mukpa Zedia and Japon Japo Mombochi Leson. That is what that's the Chapter is a Mugatama, G Chanita Chipan Chinger, Ro. Tatanda. Navyanda Chiwanika Chipan Navyanda Mare Navyanda Gopa Gopa.
Oh yeah, distraction and excitation are a little bit similar.
Gopa Nitets and the chicken dochaka church of some charto paternity shame the Gombi caps the Nicha catches Arawazi. Not to Gombia because the control the chicken short Tangin the Trijari, the Mukis Sim Shalot Trijana, Trijarin, Dochaka, Injiming Docha and Goyamandua. So Satechi 괜찮은 진도 다 접차고 미시기 손도 돼 지마 나서 리그 지마 리그 journey battery leonser.
So, as we said, this excitation is when we lose our object because of an object of attachment that we are distracted by, and then distraction itself can be any of these afflictions that we are, or objects of anger, attachment, or ignorance that we are distracted by. But there will be probably, or there is a more detailed explanation later on in the text.
Last ten rich chejo taningazo semjong ngapching nashikanga ngani tanda tamatal tamashit lesson jengir the jendingiro jazia decent lesson.
Okay, so then out of these 51 mental factors in total, now we are coming to the last four, and these are the variable mental factors.
Last tani tandatso lilabore pombo tarnierje ni patingyo nierje tarnierziat nazo Ranyet Nima Taban Sama Kigdeore Hamoko Marta Tate, Sound Lochile Shakores, Cognette de Semba in Yopton the Chawan, the Wanshikangatanal Dunita, Martini, Wanshitama Leka Kaja, Tenji Lake Chili Chang, Sound Lochile Jacorita, Yan Tabaku de or Hakojero. There is two the Wanshita Deon Leka Cheni, Sound Lochile.
So, the first of these four variable mental factors is sleep, and as we are all, doing this every day, we know what we're talking about here. It's sleep is that when that sets in when all the sense consciousnesses are not operating anymore.
Tanabje, that's a one she issue Kijashi on the suit that Nil the Saulo town at the Rancho Lila on the jury. A new couple of one she's at Chiga Yomari, new couple Yishimato Yomari. One she's at the Sapicabli or Manganian Joti, washing at the Mukut Zintongo Marina. Jatuyo Maris Nagatranom, Yasheg Romeo, Liga Jachanyon to Homar, Samai, Niba Kanganyam Yishima to Hayo Mar. So the one she yishita Nik Capta Sakal Saulochit on the Gashila, one she yishis at Ramantro Landu, there's a retro Lilayo Sarisam.
Yeah, so at sleep, or during sleep, all the senses are not operating anymore. It's only the mental consciousness that is active, right? We in sleep we don't smell, we don't hear, we don't see with our senses. It's just the mental consciousness. So in the waking state of course everything, all the senses are operating, are active, but at sleep it's only the mental consciousness being active.
And in your pattern, your pattern lilagra, that your pattern again Magiloma, some Jajakare, Tapena, so which you Nil Dupa Mombosani, telling your pachena and Geva in Laore, Dupas. And it's a gay chawando, chicha, Gimbando, Tanchi, Jima Semnanda Ocean, Yopando, Chetin and Mageva Chando, is a Geval and Yopachina, Mageva and Yopachina, Gevali Chandors. The Niloma Tindo, which it has. The Lhamo the Chila, Chalan the Chila, Caban the Chila, and Yobakin, Lomater is a worry. And Yopa,
And then the second of these variable mental factors is regret, and that can be either virtues, non-virtues, or neutral. And say someone regrets some virtuous actions that would turn out to be then a negative action. If we have done something positive, but we regret the positive action, that becomes negative. Likewise, if we have done something negative, harmed someone else, but we have a regret for that action, then that becomes positive, right? And then if you regret a neutral action, say we have lost the phone or so, then that's neutral.
Tani Tokyo Nitre, Tamanitre, Tandangazo, Kirtanga Masalina Yopachila, Kashi Samlo Rapondo, Lekando, China, Rajan Chini, Drindo, Kitani, Samlo Rapachu, and Gashina, Lekat, Tonda Karchina, Jipchachini, Samlo Tani, Shedini, Samlo Rapo, Jipo, Nio Pinani, Rapatala, Rapa, Samlo Tandi, Topata, Jipcha Samlo Tandi, Tupala de Vore.
Caricola,
Leka Carianari, Tokyo Nika Leka Caranjina, your Penang Kitchen Shinapa, Shepsan Rishi, Dini Mittel, Yopashik Chiayori, Shafram Rishini, Jani, Topashik Chiayori. Samlo Topa.
Topa, Shipsapore, Mare.
Topa, Japa.
And then the last so the third and the fourth of these variable mental factors are inquiry and analysis. They're fairly similar. The only difference is that inquiry, thinks about something, or thinks about something more in a coarse manner, roughly, or can be related to any work or talking in a more general way, as it were. An analysis is thinking through something more in a detailed manner, more profound.
Las authentic chire tandal vjetla jengir la goya kar reziti jengir zyada nda ransto ko korongo china gevareta magevareta nyomo chanreta chizena chishia yo maris yana yo pena nga cho nyiku kabla ngel chi chancho ko sem rawo ta ni jin rawo chi kasawlo ta ni nyiku sona nya tsama geva chanro res nyikal tspan ro chi za konron chi zani nyiku sona nya tsama mageva chanro res ngani nyikala ngala tazi chi Lhamo teng samlon chi tani ni kusona ni tsamba Lhamo te chandu res osonza nyatelia gewata magewata Lhamo te semiores yopala gewata magewata Lhamo te san ta gishe son
Yeah.
tena just tokyo te solia karlonda te ji wangi gewata magewata Lhamo sa pa singirndro ayo sonza shandin gero azini tanyeta
Yeah. So why are these variable mental factors called like this? It's because they can be, and all of them, it's not just regret, sleep, regret, inquiry, and analysis. All four of those can be either positive or negative or neutral according to one's motivation. Say if one were to go to sleep at night with a positive mindset, having, giving rise to bodhicitta, compassion or whatnot, then it's said then the whole time of the sleep will become virtuous. And likewise, if we have something, a negative intention, negative thought of anger, for example, and go to sleep with a mindset of anger, then the sleep becomes negative. And if you just think about something neutral, then the sleep will be neutral. And regret, Geshe Lharampa just explained. And the same is true with inquiry and analysis. Again, it very much depends on our motivation, what we are thinking about, whether, the outcome or the action becomes positive or negative or neutral.
Nani atso samlo yakpo zeyatende anyet nanchunro china ta nyalwe che de so zawa chimbo petsang du karziti nikala katal yinchu manchu gewi samlo chingonde kene nyeto at ke chimbo rezini tindishi to chena chenchi ko samlo kanga nyaka terimbo ka sama gewa chandro at te ke chimbo re nyakala ka samlo ramda ta yo mare dikpi sho samlo tana Lhamo teng samlo tana teni nyakusona yana kyonra kare yana Lhamo te ran chandro res ina gewi samlo te shu tani nye ko ke chimbo rezini te lapcha shu jagunu te chorso ya amgi nikala ka sewan raw chamsen raw go mini te pe yapora mizat chamse zat yona pe kenso ranja kangal yapondo
It's oftentimes, I mean, in for practitioners say the yamnan chigen de tsala.
Tata nyamle chinge to so te che ding do sonta ngar choye te najin chi kala concept chi che to tanazi nikala ka semcha samal ki pochi yongwa sho kange mo yongwa sho sambi samlo tanji samlo chi tani ni jawa ina ni kusona sama gewa chandro gres
Anyway, in general, sleep is considered. But here more maybe in the context of Buddhist practitioners, the sleep is considered such an important time, and there's always the advice that one should go to bed to sleep with a kind-hearted, loving attitude, because then the whole time that we spend sleeping, which is a major part of the day, right, or our time, then that becomes virtues. That's oftentimes given, and Geshe Lharampa wants to also encourage you and give you pass on the advice to go to bed with a kind-hearted attitude.
The gate is also. The Nitanga so Kundili shape is him jong up changachik ziatanga lorik than the sherawa, then he lure some the sherawa, how lure nital desa trick shini, desa tamatal, same John Nishini, same John to Napchangachik, te shape in only ta Napchangachik the zopare.
Okay, so now we had these different presentations of the mind. Right? We looked at earlier on we had the sevenfold presentation of the mind. the threefold presentation of the mind, and then the twofold presentation.
Yes, and
And then that again was subdivided into 6 parts, and the last one was about these 51 mental factors, which we just now then completed.
Nata zosonreta zosonata kandili semjongap chengachi shiona zokanal lopo yinye gatan shio resina kitani lopo yinye tisonal semjong mombundu yena ya mukile kor dom japsachi do dom japsati nal semjong jetik tamba mung shemen
Shipshushi
shetu
Shitu.
jetu mato shemen do lopo yinye zokanal
Yeah.
ko detsanji semji samocha gevi samocha nyomo Chembu samo oni sar, mo chongi samo chei sar. Ani mangi pya gyat zeni tandi desan ngatik chi je ore te che ti counter je tu ma to mandu.
So there is well, we followed this presentation of 51 mental factors, but then Master Vasubandhu in his Treasure of Knowledge, he has a list of 46 mental factors. Set up into 5 categories. Extensive mental factors, extensive virtues factors, extensive afflictive factors. That's on page, what is it in the ebook? 189. Extensive non-virtuous factors and narrow afflictive factors.
Semji samam chere, gevi samam chere, nyomo chemo samam chuk. Magevi samani nyomo chung samam che mangi ba gyahins. Tawateri. Tate jetu mangamena ta continue ngapchinga shishendo kata so mere zenandini da so mendo tumu me gevica chachig nani tumu me geca ziyata jamandu gevica chamato jamandu zoka. Aso geca chachig shemba kasa kini.
Yeah, get it ani chuchigani.
Zoki nongi tinani ching ma pindu. Geca chachig nani tumu me geva ziyata jamandu.
Timo maybe. Timo maybe gets okay. In the give what to jig.
Yeah, chachig nani.
Chuma toge mare.
Chigma pire.
Yeah, so there is a difference. For example, we follow the presentation of, say, for example, these 11 virtuous factors, and Vasubandhu in his Treasure of Knowledge, he has a list of 10 virtues. He doesn't specifically mention the root of virtue that is free of ignorance.
Ani
Non-ignorance.
stanyu chikanang tawat jamandu.
Oh.
Stanyu chikanang tanyu tawat ma piarisha.
Tower, a view. The Sanyan took. And out of these 6 root afflictions, he doesn't mention Tower, view.
Tani tanda ngaso tamag nang nyenyo nyeshanani shivja maimba tab jengi da nawyang zini tamasam da mapisha.
And then he also doesn't mention these last 3 out of these 20 non-virtues. I mean, the secondary afflictions.
Watanga tama piti Lhamo jetrikta zotan tanda continue ka chikpa chikyanre papa tome talopo ini shetan chikpa chikyanre. Lhamo jetrikora nga pizza son.
Oh yeah, but for the rest, they're all except for these slightly a few differences that we just now mentioned, but for the rest, these presentations are the same.
Watani do chigre shatanga so same jong zena shipi namja ka korte kala concept ro servi kecha re tatni sani jima zda jimani sem chara kanal liu gopanal manjo ye sem jong korteli tanda gachi mo bondu ta saman nga so jati so era kamandu tani chik tanda nga so rashi and rawo chini tini chik shaye.
So anyway, that kind of completes the rough presentation of these, presentations of the mind and the mental factors. And there's more to it, but we don't just have the time. What I would like to continue with in the next class is about these subtleties of the mind. It's part 3 of this book, the 2nd volume. On gross and subtle minds, which starts on page 200. Well, the English version has a few things added onto it. Geshe Lharampa follows the Tibetan text, and that starts. That starts. Yeah, Ragi Re. Oh yeah, that starts round, I have to double check. Page 251.
나서 tani tanga
But
tso ne kyotso chatore kyotso sama parchi goni ngama pat di sem gna ja sama ta chikle yore tani kyotso gyarjonchi tet batso tet cherochi ta kali chena yapo chachi tende yore ro
and Geshe encourages you to do some more self-study on this. And the Kazarangche.
a kotso sama parchi sama leni kyanyare ndo goni le so kotso
I know. Also, the ones who are joining online, most of you, or maybe all, have been there from the beginning. And Geshe encourages all of you to, go through the text again to do some self-study.
Tani takishi anaji nga so de tsama pena nyenyo nyeshe ta tsanyo chikta nga so nabje semgu gela katse mayon na yasho ke samlo ta sore dewa chachik ta so na kati na yongo ya ga tati na le pa gosha jani da yong shoni shena ta so tare de ore pa pango ya ta tsanyo chikta nyenyo nyeshe ta cha ta gel nyamle che ko na ga chachik ta cha de ore.
And so all these, mental factors that we have talked about, such as the root afflictions and the secondary afflictions, of course, all these factors that we, need to work on to diminish, eventually, gradually. And then the root virtues are the ones that we need to develop.
Tani tanga so teri gabanang manjo me tani nga so nabja jendel pena kon gestai nyomo ba chikana ni manga so saulo chitanda pena ndo chata vte nga so kange zo ya chiandu ta pendo wa chiandu so chat yawlo job jon saulo mombo tan tena je control na pendo mombo ndu kange mombo chigindu to so saulo mombo tan ta ke gomze de ore ke gomze na karzeti saulo ko tembem ji chesati di dochok saulo qualité ke saulo te yon kali kapoyor te meni saulo chikama to ni ke pondchi na yan gangi tin pena control zeatel kyon tonsona tani katina o control do nga control te la yo marisan lansan so control man neto achi control te kyon ma toni control te nga so penton on de charna control yapten de cheni telita control cheri leungo sonza katina so control tawala kyon ta te ke chembore.
What also is very important to do some analytical meditation. And to be really clear about the drawbacks of these afflictions. We have to be clear that, anger is not a good thing. If we don't think further about it and we're not aware and don't see the drawbacks, then, it doesn't help us to develop our minds, and diminish the anger, for example. So we have to really see the faults of anger and attachment, all the other afflictions, and do some, analysis with it. And only then, if we can really understand and acknowledge that these are not good for us and others, then we can work on diminishing them.
Nyomo bi nasan de chuala pe chake ni zongo gore pe nanga so docha controla so pat nasata uchi le jana de chuala pe na nasan de chuti tombo zme gya gondo shachu tang
Alors
zme ma jam na tsagri na gro zikcha me gya gondo tani shachu tang ni muki ya pochi chagore memba shachu ya pochi tang ma to na zikcha tang di yang jo tsna yon te da chi banga so nam ja jin de nyoma pon la jogom chini tanda nabji meditation ze de gom ja de ate hajan ka chimborela nyomo le pa kyon tani yan de saulo tang de ate ke chisho terchi tsagore nyomo tsawani ni me pazoala nyomo gkyon tongore mo nyomo kyo man toni gom ka te jana ze chamen ton ana ni kap lolo chakhare ma to jimalian kangileon di nyomo khate leon o sonza yinchi menchi nyomo le kyon ta ke chimbore
yeah so really it's very, very important to see the drawbacks of the afflictions. If you don't do that, but so if you do not engage in analytical meditation, but just only do single-pointedly meditation, shamatha, just it is a good thing, but it's not enough to really get rid or eliminate the afflictions from the root. It's like having say a major health issue which needs surgery, but if we don't go for the surgery to really remove the whatever we are having, then we might get some whatever other kind of milder medicine which makes us, alleviate the problem to some extent for the time being, but eventually it will get, again worse and we'll suffer more and more. So what this is saying, that we need not only do single-pointed meditation, but we also need to engage in quite a bit of analysis and get our heads around the fact that, the afflictions, have a lot of drawbacks.
아니 가서그니 지아들이 또 양조사로다 배나가서 컨트롤하기 갑라 컨트롤하기 나 컨트롤한 거 딩아드 카운드 산이 야포치 다토 제니치 리제다 셈렌도 리라 자시몬보치 배나 고볼로 접고치나 키워 사면치마이 메모로만 남카면 납심마이 그만나 딜리전비 키워 카운즈니 다치온디 난 감축 권이 지금도 사연 감당하는도 처음 감당하는도 매인 감당하고 롱군 감당하고 남기 감당해도 납시인 감당해도 상감제나 다 샤다 빠빠라서 바리 청감제나 주보는 거 롬비르들이 매인 감제나 쪼크르들이 롱감제나 우크다 소리 아니 남기 감제나 코파나 동차다 소리들이 납신 감나 시바 대측 보고 나올지 대측 보도 컨트롤 장케 나한테 대측 보고 가르는도 지지온디 시아라간도
Also in line what Geshe Lharampa said last time, that it's also good practice to do ani dilatene yang nyamong
tombanik tsitandri tanda kiwa samachmais hat tombanik kachashigor tanda tombanik shigora na tomba tsigora
that in a dark cover mena dilatene yang nyamong me pa so in line what Geshe Lharampa said last time, that if we are searching for the self, for the me, where is it in the body and mind? Is it in the body? Is it in the mind? Where is it? That will also help us to diminish the afflictions. And then there's a quote by Nagarjuna where he says, the self is neither neither of the elements. It's not the earth element, or it is not the self, or the I is not the earth element. It's not the water element, it's not the fire element, it's not the wind element, not the space, and not the consciousness. So it's neither one. There's no self to be found in these elements. And when we, analyze accordingly, we can think that everything, the earth element in our body is everything solid, the bones and flesh, and then the water element is any liquid in our body. And then the fire is the warmth of the body, and the wind is the breath, and then the space is, or the empty spaces in the body, the hollow spaces in the body, and then we have the consciousness. But so when we do this analysis, we will we'll see that the self is not findable in any, or is not any of these elements. And this very much also relates then to the practice of emptiness.
Dochazati yapon zipochi kegorin zipochin duema zipochachi chinit zipota landor dochakenge date yam sita da landor tenajin chatota tindinga sunyo mori riri le samlo tani tindike yondi tsiata hajang keche mori tsiati ko tsideta koro semlo lo koro zoyon re kero sanyam nyongo tata te jamba samlo tamata mas nga ka andu sani tsindeta tsipazan ke nga ta kandu dochakenge nga ta kan chatochenge nga ta kandu.
Also, when we have a strong sense of anger, we can then, analyze where who's the person that is angry, or we think of the another person we are angry towards. Where's the person that we are angry towards? Or we can do likewise with all the other afflictions. Attachment. Where's the person being attached, or where's the person that I'm attached to, and so forth. And by doing so, these afflictions will get lesser and lesser.
Tendrigo Saulo the Giritan and Gemata was there with not Parshile was at Gemata no lady chop Gumanashan, then each other made by Rajan Chadan at the Korom maker in it and going at all to the Yamion Tomoshi or Marita. Tele was at a Kati in a Gede, Gate Saulo Tanti.
Gimanajin,
Pashoya Gimanaj, Gimanaj on it by Marwa. So a Gimanaj Chichena Chato Marwa, so Gimago, the Lushiras Supazamia, Gash the Supazani Cherata. Yeah,
control you do
control Yerion Gemata, so Gemata.
What also helps is to think that oneself and the objects that we are either attached towards or angry towards and so forth are like an illusion. And normally, at least generally speaking, we wouldn't, if we think whatever another person is like an illusion, we wouldn't get angry so easily.
Lasa, tani try and do it, try and I and you remain a jar.
There, probably could you please make an example of inquiry and analysis? Kaisa, Tokpa Dang. Chipa.
Toba to Kyoban.
Digi pay. Pay.
Peziatangaso, Lekandrochinachi, the Nido Chalandrochi, that is Samlochi, Shashandrochimato, Jepchakuni Salo Machinki, Samlochin Doa. Till Topasi was, yeah.
Pecha
Tai in Arian, Leka Carina, Robsa Robsandrochimato, Chihanko de Yonir. Jean-Yves Rapina Binji Sim Jones in Itania Coron Tegia, Rapina Basidi, Jarsam Mato, Jipcha Saulo Mata. That part of jury, Chinijipcha, Saulotani Tadini, Samlotele, Kyopazi war.
I mean, we can, with you, got Jennifer's first question. So inquiry would be, say, we're looking at the text, for example, but just very superficially, roughly. Whereas analysis is, studying a text more deeply, in a much more detailed manner. I think that's sort of the answer in essence. Mm-hmm. And then, how can we get this ebook? I can try to send it in the group if I'm able to. I try. I downloaded it as I try to figure that out and send it in the group how to share this ebook. Yeah. What the page on English? Wait. Page numbers I mentioned earlier. What is the name of the book? The name of the book is Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, and it's Thupten Jimpa has been involved in that, but it's by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Then there's something in French or in Portuguese. I can't understand.
Annie, hi. I have already the answer.
Oh, okay.
I
The answer. Okay.
Okay. The page of this book in English is
yes.
page 199. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
The number of it.
They're probably different. Yeah, it's different from the e-version. Yes. Sorry. Okay, there's a link. Yes. Next, gross and subtle. Yes, the next class is on the gross and subtle minds page, the part 3. Yes, correct. Yes. Okay, that's it. Okay, then we leave here. We leave it at this. Thank you. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you, Geshe. Thank you, Anila.